Wellness Rhythm Show. Find your rhythm. Live your wellness.
Y'all, quick question. How much water have you had today? Like, actually had. Not, I think I had some with my coffee. Water. Real water.
Right, because here is the uncomfortable truth. Most of us are walking around in a state of mild, chronic dehydration, and we don't even register it as thirst.
And what's wild is that by the time you feel thirsty, you're already there. Your body is already behind.
There's a statistic from the European Food Safety Authority that genuinely stopped me in my tracks. They estimate that a significant portion of adults across Western countries are chronically underhydrated. Not dramatically, but enough to affect cognitive performance, mood, and physical function on a daily basis.
Mood. That one hit me, because I've had days where I'm just off, irritable, foggy. And I blamed sleep or stress or just being a working mom in general.
And it could just be dehydration. That's what we're unpacking today. What you're actually getting wrong about hydration and why it affects so much more than you think.
So let's start at the beginning, because I feel like hydration is one of those topics where everyone thinks they know the answer. 8 glasses a day, right?
Right, and here's what I've learned. That 8x8 rule, 8 ounces 8 times a day, has almost no rigorous scientific basis. It's been traced back to a 1945 US Food and Nutrition Board recommendation that was widely misinterpreted.
Wait, seriously? That's the thing we've all been told our entire lives.
The original recommendation actually included the water found in food. Someone stripped that context away, and drink 8 glasses became gospel. Dr. Heinz Valtine published a thorough review on this in the American Journal of Physiology back in 2002 that essentially said, there is no evidence for this as a universal rule.
Here's the thing, though. Does that mean we should drink less or just think about it differently?
Differently. The National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine put general adequate intake at about 3.7 litres total per day for men and 2.7 litres for women. But that includes water from all sources, food included.
Which feels way more manageable when you put it that way, honestly.
Brilliant point. And about 20% of our water intake typically comes from food. Cucumbers, lettuce, watermelon, strawberries, these all count.
Okay, so let's talk about what actually happens when you're underhydrated, because this is the part I didn't fully appreciate.
So the research here is genuinely interesting. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition by Dr. Lawrence Armstrong at the University of Connecticut looked at mild dehydration, as little as 1 to 2% of body weight in fluid loss, and found measurable effects on mood, concentration, and the perception of task difficulty.
1 to 2%, that is not a lot.
No. And for a 150-pound person, that's roughly just 2 to 3 pounds of fluid. On a warm day in Austin, you could hit that before lunch if you're not paying attention.
Y'all, I've had entire mornings that I now understand better. The sluggishness, the headache that creeps in around 10 a.m. I used to call that my second coffee window.
Which is actually a common response. People reach for caffeine when the real issue is hydration. And caffeine, of course, has mild diuretic properties.
So you're chasing the problem with something that slightly makes the problem worse. That's a fun loop.
A very British kind of irony, yes.
If you're new here and you're enjoying this kind of conversation, please hit like and subscribe. We do this every week, and it genuinely helps people find us.
Right, so let's dig deeper into the research here, because cognitive performance is where I think this hits hardest for our audience. Whether you're in a high-stakes finance meeting or trying to remember where you put your child's permission slip.
Both equally stressful, David.
Equally, a 2011 study from Tufts University found that even mild dehydration was associated with increased fatigue and lower scores on tests of vigilance and working memory. And a meta-analysis in Nutrients from 2019 confirmed these patterns across multiple study designs.
So this isn't fringe stuff. This is showing up consistently across research.
Consistently. And it gets particularly relevant for our listeners who are in the sandwich generation or heading toward pre-retirement, because kidney function naturally becomes less efficient with age, and the thirst mechanism itself becomes less reliable.
Wait, the thirst mechanism gets less reliable?
It does, hun. Older adults are more likely to be underhydrated because they simply don't feel thirsty, even when they need fluids. It's one of the reasons dehydration-related hospitalizations are disproportionately high in adults over 65.
That is one of those facts that sounds alarming, but is actually really actionable. Because if you know the signal is unreliable, you can build in other cues.
Exactly. You hydrate by schedule, not by sensation.
Okay, I want to push back slightly here, though. And this is where I get a little skeptical. Because I see people walking around with enormous 64-ounce water bottles like it's a personality. And there's also the whole electrolyte trend. the sports drinks, the fancy mineral waters. Is any of that actually necessary for normal people?
That's a fair and important challenge. Plain water is sufficient for the vast majority of people in everyday conditions. The electrolyte conversation becomes relevant during prolonged exercise, generally over an hour of sustained effort, or in high heat, or during illness involving significant fluid loss.
So not just because you had a busy Tuesday.
Not just a busy Tuesday, no. The sports drink industry has done exceptional marketing, though. Gatorade was originally developed in the 1960s for University of Florida football players training in serious Florida heat. That is a very specific context.
Which is not my context at a school pickup. But I'll be honest, I do add a pinch of sea salt and some lemon to my morning water sometimes, and I feel like it helps.
And there's some logic there. Sodium helps cellular water retention, and a small amount in the morning, particularly if you've been fasting overnight, may support how efficiently your body uses the fluid. It's not pseudoscience, but the amount matters. You don't need much.
Here's the thing, though. I think where people get the most wrong is the timing, not just the quantity. I used to drink almost nothing until noon and then try to catch up.
Right, and that's a very common pattern. Overnight, you lose fluid through respiration and any light sweating. You wake up mildly depleted before you've done anything. Starting the day with water before coffee is probably the single highest leverage hydration habit most people aren't doing.
I actually started doing this a few months ago, full glass before anything else, and the difference in how the morning feels is real.
Dr. Mark Mukherjee and other sports medicine researchers consistently point to morning hydration as a foundational habit. It's simple, free, and the evidence supports it.
So practically speaking, and this is where I want to make sure we're giving people actual things to do, what would you say are the 2 or 3 moves that make the biggest difference?
First, water before coffee in the morning consistently. Second, don't rely on thirst as your primary cue, especially if you're over 50. Set a reminder or anchor it to existing habits, a glass at each meal, one mid-morning, one mid-afternoon.
And the third?
Eat your water, genuinely. Add cucumber, include berries, have that side salad. It contributes meaningfully, and you're not white-knuckling another glass of plain water at 9 p.m.
And for anyone who struggles with plain water tasting like nothing, a squeeze of lemon or lime, some sliced cucumber, even a sprig of mint, you're not cheating, you're just making it work for you.
Which is the only version of any wellness habit that matters, the version you'll actually maintain.
Okay, so if you take one thing from today, before your morning coffee, drink a full glass of water. That's it. That's the starting point. It costs nothing, takes 30 seconds, and the research says it actually moves the needle.
Right, and if you're over 50, please take seriously the fact that your thirst signal is less reliable than you think. Hydrate by intention, not by sensation. It is genuinely that simple.
Y'all, thank you so much for spending this time with us. If this episode made you think, or made you go grab a glass of water, that's a win. Share it with someone who lives on coffee and dry salads. They need this.
And do subscribe if you haven't. We'll be here next week with something equally unglamorous and equally important.
Optimistically realistic. That's us. Take care of yourselves out there. This show is part of the VoxCrea.AI system. If you want a show like this for your organization, without building it yourself,
go to VoxCrea.AI and request a sample episode.